Hello everyone, I'm Ron Berger. Welcome to the Astrology News Report, an alternate view of world events as seen through the lens of Vedic astrology. Today is October 7th, 2018. This is the Special Report section, where I take a topic or person or situation that is pertinent to world events and do an in-depth astrological analysis. This will be a special predictive report on the potential effects of Venus retrograde for each rising sign chart. This year, Venus is retrograde in sidereal Libra from October 5th to November 16th. Venus begins its retrograde phase at 16 degrees Libra, and during the following 6 weeks, backs up to 1 degree Libra. The apparent backwards motion of a planet only happens when the planet is at its closest to the Earth, therefore bright in the heavens, therefore strong. But since the planet is not behaving in the normal manner, its significations get altered during its retrograde phase. When a planet is retrograde, it is going back over the part of the zodiac it previously traversed. Therefore, retrograde motion indicates a return to the past, a redoing, or a reconsideration. Venus is the planet of romance and relationship, harmony and agreement, pleasure and sociability, attraction and appearance, value and finance, guidance and counsel. When Venus is retrograde, romance gets reevaluated. Agreements are renegotiated, purchases reconsidered, and guidance may be faulty. A retrograde planet, going back over the part of the zodiac it just passed through, means that Venus retrograde can manifest as going back to a previous relationship. Note that this year Venus is retrograde in its own sign and not under any malefic influence. Therefore, most of this reconsideration will be for good effect. Libra is the sign of fairness, balance, harmony. So Venus going back over things in this sign is mostly looking for a better arrangement, an improvement to the current circumstance. In other words, if handled well, this retrograde period could have some positive outcomes. So now let's go through the zodiac and see how retrograde Venus will affect each rising sign. This will be according to the house of your natal chart where the sign Libra is located. For anyone new to this YouTube channel, please note that in Vedic astrology we use the sidereal zodiac, the one you can see in the night sky with your own eyes. If you are thinking of your Western astrology chart, which uses the tropical zodiac, you have to recalculate by subtracting 24 degrees from your chart positions to make up the difference between the two zodiacs. If you are Aries rising, Venus is retrograde in your 7th house, this house of one-on-one relationships. Since Venus is the planet of relationship, its retrograde condition in the 7th house will definitely put an accent on your connection with your significant other, perhaps even challenging the bond with him or her during this 6 weeks long period. Libra is an idealist. Retrograde Venus wants to reevaluate the arrangement and make an improvement. Best course is to cooperate with this energy pattern and work it out with your partner. Alternately, Venus retrograde's signification of returning to the past could bring up a past relationship for reconsideration. For Taurus rising people, retrograde Venus is affecting your 6th house, the house of work and employment. Here, retrograde Venus signifies reworking your relationships with your co-workers, or, if you have them, employees. The 6th house has the signification of struggle and difficulty. Could be that these relationships really do need some work. For solving problems, Venus, as the planet of agreement, prefers compromise rather than force. Retrograde Venus wants to go back over the problem, and find a win-win solution. If you have Gemini as your rising sign, retrograde Venus is causing effects in your 5th house, the house of romance, creativity, children, teachers and teachings, spiritual practice, speculation, and investment. Retrograde Venus wants to reevaluate the romantic situation in any case, and when in the 5th house, that is even more likely. As the planet of guidance, backwards in the house of teachers and teachings, retrograde Venus makes you question the instructions of your teacher. Venus is finance. The 5th house is speculation and investments. Retrograde Venus suggests that investments aren't going to work out at this time. For Cancer rising people, Venus is retrograde in your 4th house of home, property, domestic life, comforts, and mother. Venus is the planet of aesthetics. When it is retrograde, the appearance of things becomes unsatisfactory. In the house of the home, this could stimulate a need for home improvement, redecorating. But be careful. When the planet of value is backwards, you may not be getting true value for your expenditure. Venus retrograde in the house of mother indicates some issues are likely to come up in that relationship. Leo rising charts have Venus retrograde in their 3rd house, the house of everyday actions, close relatives, neighbors, desires, and use of skills and talents. Everyday operations will leave something to be desired. You feel like your relationships with your sibling and or neighbors need some improvement, but your efforts and initiative won't be giving satisfactory results. Venus, the planet of creativity, transiting in the house of skills, is usually good, but when it is retrograde, your creative efforts don't live up to your expectations. Virgo rising people get retrograde Venus in the 2nd house of personal finances, family, materiality, and speech. Venus is a financial planet. In the 2nd house, usually it is beneficial, but when retrograde, the money tends to get delayed for some reason. Likewise, Venus in this sector is usually good for family relations, but when retrograde, it can stimulate the critical nature of Virgo to be dissatisfied and want something better. Since the 2nd house is the material stuff you acquire, retrograde Venus transiting here is not a good time to be making a purchase. You get the new dress home, and somehow it doesn't look as good as it did in the store. If you are Libra rising, you get a front row seat to the effects of retrograde Venus, manifesting in your ascendant, the house of self. As the relationship planet, but going backwards, this Venus transit can make things a bit awkward. It will make you question all of your relationships, and people who you know will see you differently, because Venus is the planet of appearance. When retrograde in the 1st house, you may start to question your own attractiveness, and if people are reacting to you negatively, your inner demons start to appear. For Scorpio rising people, Venus is retrograde in your 12th house, the house of the subconscious. This is somewhat problematic because the dissatisfaction that retrograde Venus stirs up will be hard to get at. Things don't quite feel right, but for no definable reason. Usually Venus transiting in the 12th house of hidden actions induces some kind of self-pleasuring. But when it is retrograde, your usual indulgences don't quite work for you. The 12th house is the house of sleep and dreams. A retrograde transit here can disturb your sleep. Sagittarius rising people will get retrograde Venus affecting their 11th house, the house of goals and ambitions, profits and rewards, friends and associates. Since Venus is a financial planet, its transit in this sector is normally helpful for generating profits, but when it's retrograde, the payoff is either delayed or is less than expected. The 11th house friendships don't seem to measure up. There's a sense of dissatisfaction, disaffection. Another possibility is that since Venus retrograde can manifest as just going back to the past, so now might be a good time to give that old acquaintance a call. For Capricorn rising charts, it's the 10th house where Venus is retrograde. In the house of community actions and professional activities, Venus transit is normally helpful. It's the planet of attraction and appearance and harmony in the house of public deeds. But when it is retrograde, you have to be careful. Things get tricky. You run the risk of ending up in uncomfortable public situations or calling attention to yourself in such a way that others find inappropriate. If you are Aquarius rising, Venus is retrograde in your 9th house, the house of higher education, long-distance travel, meritorious deeds, father and guru, beliefs and religion. In this sector, retrograde Venus makes the enjoyment of your journey more problematic. Your good deed can backfire, and your relationship with your religion or your professor or guru doesn't live up to your expectations. And for Pisces rising charts, retrograde Venus affects your 8th house of transformation, chronic problem, finances with others, inheritance, and legacy. Since Venus is a financial planet, when it is retrograde in the house of financial arrangements with others, there tends to be some problem in that area. The finances of your partner are inadequate, the contract gets delayed or needs to be renegotiated, the bank loan you are expecting is held back. Paradoxically, retrograde planets are strong for effects, but don't deliver in the way that the planets in normal motion do. So, Venus, as one of the natural benefic planets when retrograde, can become seemingly negative. Therefore, it is best that, until November 16th, we don't have too much expectations of the Venus significations. After mid-November, when Venus goes back to normal forward motion, its energy will be more for the good. It remains in its own sign, Libra, until New Year's Day. And now, before leaving, a short pitch for donations. It does take a lot of time and effort to put these videos together. I'm not just yakking into the camera. You can show your appreciation for what this YouTube channel does for you by donating a few bucks to the cause. Just click on or touch the donation card you see here, which will take you to the donation page. Thanks, and until next week.